You're listening to the Fitness Rants Podcast, the show where unfiltered conversations meet real-world health and fitness.
We cut through the noise and deep dive into the truth behind health, nutrition, physique development, and the fitness industry itself.
We're your hosts, Ross Gilmore and Malin Blumdahl, experienced coaches and educators who have been part of the fitness industry for over 15 years.
If you're a coach, high performer, or someone just tired of mainstream nonsense, you're in the right place.
Now let's get into today's episode. Welcome to another episode of Fitness Rants, and today we are going to, it's very ranty indeed, but we're going to get into, I guess, something that's been quite personal to us and that we haven't really talked about, we haven't shared, and I think the title of this podcast, I was to give you the hook right here, is going to be 2025 sucked. At least it did for us, and by the sounds of it, for many other people that we spoke to, it seemed to be along those sort of similar lines, or at least a lot of similar stories and struggles. So yeah, Mal, how did you feel 2025 was for you? And then I suppose we'll get into that.
I think it's been probably the most stressful year in many ways in a long time. I mean, we've had our share amount of stress, but since we came to Dubai and the first 2 years, which can be another episode, but I think 2025,
Absolutely.
This was a point where I'm like, we even considered, at least me, you were a bit more calm about it all, but I was like, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to stay here.
Yeah.
Like it hit us so hard what happened, and like emotionally stress that I really struggled. I mean, I'm still pretty good at keeping myself grounded and, but yeah, it was a tough year, especially towards the end of the year. Oh, well, not a year, it was before my birthday.
Yeah, sort of pre-June-ish.
It's like 1.5, 2 weeks before my 40th birthday, which we had a lot, and our anniversary, so we had a lot of things to look forward to, and then something happened, which really rocked things, which is why what we're going to share now. I haven't even told my mom about this, so I may have to give her a warning.
Yeah,
I haven't been wanting to like worry her. And I think there's been some embarrassment as well, even though I shouldn't feel embarrassed about it. Haven't really told many people. So talking about this right now is...
And listen, I think we're not people who tend to be worried about what other people think or tend to worry really about judgment.
No.
But I think you hit the nail on the head. It's when it comes to, again, the details become clear. And it also become clear how this even ties into fitness in the first place. It's called Fitness Rants, and it should just be called the Rants Podcast. There can be a bit of shame around... when you're sort of become subject or victim to certain circumstances, you can feel a lot of shame around that. And I think whether it was something that was vocalized or not, I think we both certainly felt a bit of shame around,
For me, it was more actually with regards to my mom. Like, I don't want to worry her. And especially we'd had conversations with her about this before. And we were so excited about everything that was happening. And she warned us, remember? Like, I wouldn't trust X, Y, and Z. And then basically... We haven't even said what's actually happened yet, so maybe we should.
This is super cryptic so far. So let's just...
let's change the topic.
Yeah, there you go. So listen, let's just dive in. So, I mean, what happened is that we had, and we're going to get into talking about investments. It's not a topic. Money is a very funny topic for a lot of people. It's not something that we've ever felt, like people can be very funny around money. People can have very like strained or like sort of conflicting relationships with money. It can be, as we know, when it comes to finances, it's one of the greatest friction points within relationships, marriages. One of the top 3 reasons for divorce is around financial reasons, right? So we know that. And so for us, we've always been, luckily, as we are with most things as a couple, we tend to be quite on the same page with most things. We've always had very aligned goals when it comes to what do we want from the future, how we go about responsibly spending. We've agreed that in our relationship, just with my background and how my brain works with numbers and logic, is that I felt quite happy being the one that sort of, looked after our budget and finances, and I sort of control those things. I think a good place to almost lead us up to this point might be, when did we actually feel like it was the right time to start getting into investing? Well, I think we should have got into it a lot earlier than we did, right?
It was before COVID where we very much first started, because everybody who lives in Dubai can also relate to this. Like, you don't have a pension, you don't have a lot of security. So, and at that point, we hadn't really done any like saving, so that's when we first started thinking about it. And the first thing that we did was start suppose like a 25-year bond, really secure long-term thing, index fund. So that's when we started, and that was the year before COVID, I think.
Yeah, around about 2017, 2018.
I remember feeling quite stressed after COVID happened, and shit, now we have no income, and we've just signed up for this whatever amount we were putting by every month, but we managed to keep it up. But
Yeah, I mean, I think we're not going to share all like
No,
numbers,
it's
whatever,
not about
but
that.
I
It's about
think,
what happened after. But that's when we first started.
We can probably share that. Like that's a basic thing. So we started out thinking, well, if we can do something that feels manageable, let's just say we put by. And actually, what we did is that we realized that okay, well, at that time we were not long married, maybe like 2 years by that point. We also felt like, well, if we're going to start putting by into a long-term investment, think of it as almost like each of our pensions. That's the way we sort of viewed it, right?
Our each separate.
So we had separate accounts, and so we well, what's a manageable amount that we know we could do without fail every month? And we thought, well, let's start. And we just picked almost a number out of thin air. It was a little bit like, oh, $500 each. Let's just start there. And that's probably the only number we'll share from this point onwards. But that was just at least for us to get our foot on the ladder. And we knew that, okay, well, if we put that by across the year, that's going to be $6,000 at the end of the year. Okay, well, that's going to be damn sight better than anything we'd done up to that point. So it was a start. But then as time went on, post-COVID, and certainly as our business grew and we started doing a bit better, we realized that, and I'd read the book Millionaire Expat. You remember that? It was actually when we were back home in Sweden one summer, and I'd spent the time reading that, and I was like, you know what, Mal, I've done some calculations, took into account inflation, and if we're looking at like our financial goals as far as retiring and what we need to be able to sustain off that, this isn't quite going to cut it. So we actually need to work on increasing and accelerating the rate at which we invest and put by.
Also, what we were looking at is not just that's the long-term thing that's ticking on in the background, but we're also thinking, well, what about the next 5 years in terms of putting money towards like a property, whether it's for ourselves or for investment. And we weren't really having anything in place for that because the money we were putting into this long-term fund was a long-term fund.
Yep.
Fortunately, that didn't also go to plan, but we'll get to that, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think we had this thing that we wanted to have our long-term goal set up first. That just makes sense. If you're, when you move away from the UK and same with Sweden, if you, like, I know in Sweden they refer to it as you write yourself out of Sweden. So you don't have access to the benefits, to like healthcare, all that sort of stuff. Is that right? You can explain that.
Yeah, but I mean,
more?
I can come. Yeah, like you write yourself out so that you're not liable for tax there.
Exactly.
But then if I come back, then I've got nothing. Obviously, I've got no history of living in Sweden and stuff like that. So,
whereas in the UK, similar thing is that
like
we don't have that official writing in or out, but it's more a case of if you're not living and making income in the country, you're of course not. You're not exposed to tax, but you're also not due any national benefits either beyond that point. So for us, we always seen it as, well, we can't rely on state. We have to create our own economy. We have to create a point where we are self-sufficient when we retire. So the long-term stuff was always the priority. But as Matt rightly said, it's like, well, that's a long-term goal, but hold on a minute. There needs to be stuff there that's exciting and that is meaningful to work towards within the short and medium term.
Yes.
And that's where the idea of the investing in our first property, which we both felt is something that we wanted. Now, whether that was invest in our first property in Dubai or invest in property back home, either in Sweden or Scotland, we weren't really 100% sure, but we just knew that we needed to work towards that goal. Now, we essentially started thinking, well, is this something that we can manage on our own? Do we need maybe a bit of help trying to theorize all this? And I could have sat and, we spoke, I could have sat and I could have laid things out, but we thought at that point in time, you know what, maybe it's time to speak to a professional. Maybe we speak to a financial advisor. Now, again, just for the record, we're not going to be naming any names of companies or people, but just say ex-financial advisor. This person is someone that was at the time someone that I knew of. And so I reached out and said, hey, we're thinking about these financial goals. We want to.
It was an ex-client of yours, which I think is relevant
to
say because there was an element of trust there already.
Yeah, we could say that. So, okay, it was an ex-client, and at that point, it was like, okay, well, this is someone that I know. They seem very trustworthy. I feel like we can be open about where we want to go, where we are now. And so that was the case. We sat down, we had some meetings, and that individual was able to help us with setting up some different funds that had different purposes to them. So we still had our investors' trust, although that got heavily reduced in terms of contribution.
That was one of the mistakes that this advisor made. So that we'll get to the steps. But
exactly. But so we had that, and then we wanted to have a fund that we could put into that was liquid. We could get access to the money, and there wouldn't be fees or penalties. But we knew that it was a vehicle that we could put into and make a pretty decent return, but that we would be able to get that money more quickly if we wanted to do so. Which, of course, it makes sense. You're not going to put all your money for a property into a 25-year thing that has fees and all sorts of loopholes that you have to do to get the money out. So we needed something that was liquid, that we could get access to. Yeah. And so initially it all sounded very good, and we set up our numbers and we're ready to start putting into all of this. And so we did that for a good number of time. And at that point, our business was doing really, really well. So we actually stepped up the contribution to that particular fund quite aggressively, right? And at the same time, we reduced the contribution to our long-term pension, because the way it was framed to us was that, well, you can actually make more of a return by putting more into this other fund, and part of that can anyway be going towards your pension long-term as well. When we actually look back and sort of think about this, we realised that was really not the smart way to go about it.
I think, I mean, the first year working with this advisor went okay, well, until we figured out some of the stuff that she wasn't fully transparent with and things. But you're better at explaining this than I am. The first year, so with that, then you had an element, because what happened, which we'll get to, I think there was an element of proof of concept before that point, before we made such a big gamble in the second year. Yeah,
so what happened year one is we had that,
like a bond.
We had essentially like the long-term fund that we already were doing. There was the second fund, and then we had essentially what happened is our car got written off from Dubai from flooding. I know,
one day of rain.
Bloody ironic. But anyway, from that write-off of the car, we got a settlement, and then rather than actually investing back in another car, and I wouldn't have been able to anyway, because you actually can't. Not that Miles looking at me saying, is this relevant? But I like to explain it. So like, essentially, if you're self-employed in Dubai, you cannot get a car loan. It is impossible. Whereas if you're an employee, even if you're making literally half as much, like 5,000 dirhams, you can get it because your employer is part of a big company, etc. So it got to a point I was like, you know what? This would be a really good opportunity to take the settlement plus some other money we'd been putting by. Let's maybe put it into an investment where we can get a little bit more, like accelerate our funds. So we put it into a 1-year bond, UK bond. It had a 10% return. It paid out quarterly in terms of the coupons, and that was great. That first year worked out really well, and we were like, okay, this is great. Let's do something again in year two, and we'll be able to keep accelerating. So the financial advisor then came to us and promoted this product that was, well, hey, instead of 10%, we can actually do 15%. Now, in hindsight, there's always a saying when it comes to, well,
if it's too good to be true, it's probably not true.
It's probably if it's too good to be true, it probably is, right? But that's not just in investments; that's in many things in life. But certainly, when I look in hindsight, it's like, well, 15% returns is nuts when you actually think about it. Like a bond, okay, fine, it's something that's secured by the different governing bodies of that particular jurisdiction, and 10-11% is about as good as you can get usually. So 15, in hindsight, that probably should have rang an alarm bell, but she showed us other people who had done this and the returns they got, and we're like, okay, well, let's give it a try. It's 1 year. Surely within 1 year we can get in and we can get out, no problem. And so we thought, okay, we're going to get a 15% return across this time. Let's take what we made from the bond plus the interest. But then, well, this is where the red flag should have also came up for us. And again, this is just as an overall message. Just be very careful who you trust, even if they're meant to be a financial advisor. Do your due diligence and get second and third opinions. Because what we asked her to do is that she said, well, you know what? It'd be great if you were able to contribute a higher amount to this, because then you obviously make great returns. So 15% of a certain number, like a higher number, is going to be more than, of course, the half of its equivalent. So, and that was kind of the situation we're in. It was a case of how can we almost double the figure that we were thinking about putting into this investment. And so she, by utilizing some of our other investments, figured out ways that we could increase the funds that we put into this new investment. Now, of course, we're not going to share the numbers and the details of that, but then what ended up happening is that this was going to work out a little bit different. It was going to be paid by, like, twice, 2 coupons. So it was going to be at the 6-month mark, and then, of course, once the investment matured, we get the principal plus the second coupon payment, and we're like, okay, well, this is great. So then 6 months came by, we got the first coupon. We're like, okay.
Well, yeah, I feel like you're missing things here, because we also, one of the things that she said to us to do was to take money out as much as we could from our long-term fund that we had. That was
I was skimping by those details, but okay.
But I do think that this is important, because that was, something that probably no ethical advisor would, especially because those funds were actually doing really, really well and had done really, really well. But she was like, well, just take out as much as you can. And one thing that we didn't know was that, like, you also get a bonus for keeping your money after the 25 years. If you don't take anything out, then you get a significant bonus, which, we were never told that we would lose that from her.
If we took what was called an early surrender, is there any penalties for early surrender?
Yeah, we basically surrendered, and that was money that had been accumulated for how long at that point? I don't know, but a good amount of time. So
by that point, it was 5 years, 5.5 years.
Yeah. So it was like taking that out to the minimum, and then whatever we'd made from year one, into this
From the bond, yeah.
into this new whatever, which you can continue the story, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not the story.
So yeah, we invested in, and it was presented to us that it was a company called the 79th Group. And the idea behind it is that this group ultimately provided different loan note investment instruments products that allowed you to make these returns. And it was offered over 1, 2, and they had multiple terms. It was 1, 2, and 3 year terms that you were willing to do. And your return amounts would depend on how much of a risk you were willing to take as far as the 1, 2, or 3 years. Now, these type of products are commonplace in financial markets, but they're often far more regulated. At the time, the way it was presented, everything passed all the banking checks, everything passed the financial institution checks. So there was nothing at this point in time, and certainly 3,000 plus other people also were led to believe that this looked legitimate, because it certainly did. On face value, it was completely regulated properly through the banks, through the FCA, through the DFCA, et cetera, et cetera. So, okay, let's do this. And so we'd end up taking ultimately a decent chunk out of our what was already accumulated long-term pension and what we'd already made from our other investment in year one, and put a significant chunk into this. Now, as you sort of rightly mentioned, okay, well, that brings us then up to the 6-month mark. We got our first coupon payment. Awesome. Great. This is all going really well. Can't wait for it to mature at the end of the year. Oh boy, were we in for a surprise. So what ended up happening is about a month and a half before that was due to mature, I start seeing these news, like this news popping up both on social media, but also just on Facebook, because I was part of groups that, that were sort of financial investment groups and whatever else. And there was this thing about the City of London police had opened up an investigation against the 79th Group. And they were like, oh no, what's happening here? Well, definitely not good, right? So I started looking into it, and
I don't think you even told me by that point initially. You didn't even tell me.
I literally tried to keep it as much to myself until I found out more information. So I looked into it, and ultimately there was a family known as the Websters that ultimately owned this 79th Group. And so what had happened is that they had ultimately been found out that they might not have been utilising the funds for the reasons that were promised to the investors. So the idea is that when you take out an investment and it's under a loan note, the loan note specifically states this is the purpose or the vehicle of investment. As it turns out, and this is us now a year and a half, 2 years almost down the line, and it's went into administration, and the administrators have now managed to get all of the evidence and sort of bring it forward to the investors. And it turns out that ultimately all these guys did is that they would take investments, and they would initially, at least they were trying to invest it in legitimate sources. But then as time went on, what they would then start doing is they started funneling these funds out to different bank accounts, different jurisdictions. They started buying private jets, property,
airplanes,
boats, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so, aircraft, etc. And so what they were doing is that they would use any new investments that they got to pay off the original investors. And so very much what they were just doing is staying ahead a little bit of time. It's okay, well, let's just say you were the first 50 investors in. It's almost like if you were the next 50 in, they were just using the new investments acquired to pay off the due interest payments and principals of the original investors. And they carried out this facade for around about 3, 4, I think it was 5 years, almost 5 years total in the end, until they got under investigation. And so that's left us in a position where we may get the money back, but we almost have to assume that we may never get it back. You have to just at least always entertain.
So you haven't even said, like, basically we got word that everything was frozen, because at that point there was an investigation, and then you sort of
all of their assets, bank accounts, everything were frozen.
So any money that our second out payment, and all the money that we had put into this principal, basically, gone. That was the initial, like, we wouldn't get it back. And this was a month before we were due to have the money back, so it was very close.
Yeah.
And it was a month before, like, my 40th birthday, and there was like a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, the timing couldn't have been worse. So we're in a position where, at least at the time that it was announced, we had no certainty or clarity if this was ever going to be. Now, of course, as the time has went on,
our financial advisor just kind of
very blasé, this is happening, but we'll keep you posted. And actually, we've not heard from her in a long time now, which is interesting, isn't it? So anyway, long story short with that is that we took a risk that seemed like a pretty educated and balanced risk, and it did not pay off. Now, luckily, as time has now passed, the picture is looking brighter and brighter as each week and month goes on. They've been able to recover, and that when you actually look at all the data, and I'll give a very short sort of summary of it, 130 bank accounts across 99 different businesses and 10 different financial jurisdictions. has been uncovered, and they've uncovered a lot of these finances now. They've looked at the patterns, they've done all the analysis. So we're now in a position where ultimately there's going to be one of two scenarios happen. The administrators are going to be able to recover funds to a point, but ultimately what a lot of the investors are doing at this stage is they're going after either the actual introducers, which would be our financial advisor in this case, or they're going after the banks, because the banks did not even remotely come close to fulfilling what's known as AML obligations. So they should have ultimately had more, like, literally in the double digits of red flags that showed that this was a fraudulent business and that the transactions themselves were fraudulent. So yeah, on that, it was around about that time. Now, we obviously have this information now, and we almost got a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. But at the time it happened, it could not have been the worst timing. Like you said, it was a month before your birthday. It was obviously the time we were traveling and being out of the country. Now, as we came back from that vacation, I probably, from a personal standpoint, went through a lot of stress during that time. I'd already tried to maintain a cool head, trying to figure out, okay, well, we need to sort of almost like lace up our boots, and we have to sort of strip back and sort of almost like get back on our feet again. So we had to reduce our contributions to our other investments right down. We took that time to set up a rainy day fund. We took the time to really reassess.
But that was another thing as well, that, okay, that other, because we also opened up another that platform with this initial financial advisor, and she wasn't fully transparent around how that would work.
Oh yes, that's
like
right.
Money being, and this is a problem with this person, because I spoke to other people who's this advisor had done similar thing where yeah, it's fully liquid, you can get money in and out, like it's just opening up an offshore account and it's blah, blah, blah. But then actually the money that we had because we had two things going. We had this 79 group, and then we had this other thing, but that had started afresh. So we started afresh with this new thing, and we were quite aggressive with that. But that money, we were told we would be able to access any time. But actually, after the first year, the vast majority, I think all of the money was still locked. So there's like the certain, but we were never told this. Like I asked her straight out, "Is this fully liquid?" Yes, So it's just, I think that that's one of the, maybe anybody who's listening to this have had similar experience, but I've heard similar stories, especially with financial advising in Dubai, that we need to be careful around that, because there's a lot of lack of transparency around that. So we also dealt with that. So that
we have to also take a little bit of self-ownership. In fact, a lot of self-ownership, because if I had taken the illustration document that was presented and I had really scrutinized it and sought second opinion, what would have became very clear very quickly is that they have a way of setting this up where it's known as allocation units and investment units. And so that puts you in a position where ultimately for the first 2 years, all of that money that you're putting in is going towards essentially paying fees of the actual institution.
But we were told that we would make a certain amount of profit or a return, and it was after 2 years. That's how you realize that something is off, because it was after like the second year.
When it reached the second year mark.
And there was zero.
And also they said that the yearly returns would be on average 8 to 9%.
And it was like 0.2.
And it was 1.03 or something like that was the total return of it. And so ultimately it was performing much worse than even our long-term pension fund. And it was just like, hold on a minute.
And the thing is, yes, we can take personal responsibility, and that is true, but we also had another close friend here in Dubai who's, they're lawyers, they're intelligent people who'd also actually, they also invested in the same thing, not the 79th group, but this other thing. And they also missed this, but it's from the same financial advisor. So I just think when you're hiring somebody that you trust to have your best interest at heart, when this is not we have enough to think about. Like that's why you hire a financial advisor. Yeah, exactly. So it's just, I was really angry.
It was very much the absolute definition of selective information. But what it taught us as a big lesson is, right, well, anytime you get documentation for, especially for something as important as investments, you've got to do your due diligence to make sure you understand the ins and outs before you go ahead. So that's been a big lesson for us. And so what have we done in that time? Well, in that time, it's forced us to really re-examine how we go about doing things. We had to spend a good 6 months really pulling everything back, setting up a rainy day fund, really thinking about re-strategizing how we're going to go about ultimately correcting course here. Now, we've had to almost do it based on two scenarios. Either we are going to get that original principal back eventually, which will be the best case scenario, of course. But let's assume that we're not. Well, there's no point in just laying back on our backs and just going, okay, I give up, I'm just waving the white flag. We have to re-strategize how we're going about things. And so we've got a plan. In fact, just this past week, I had a conversation with a colleague of, actually a client of mine. I know that people think, don't make the same mistake again, but this is actually going to be self-managed, and I'm only paying a consultation fee to help arrange and set things up, and then I'm going to self-manage things. So we've essentially taken the time to re-strategize how we're going to go about doing things moving forward. So it's been a very tough lesson. It was a very stressful and emotional lesson.
I think it was a really tough emotional time, because I know you struggle too, but I was really depressed. Like I was probably the most, like all the feelings that you would experience, I really struggled.
And all the stages of grief.
Grief, yeah. I was just like, also a phase of just like, what's the point of anything? And I think this is where I got, like, we've been working so hard and we spend very little money on, like, we don't travel. We're very mindful about where we spend our money and stuff like that. We try and keep our expenses low.
We don't club, we don't party.
We don't, I don't buy like stuff, really. So when you've worked so hard and you're so close to reach a milestone, and then to have that just pulled under your feet, like it's just going to affect you. And I think this is why we wanted to talk about this now, because it's, how do you deal with that? You can't just lay down and give up. And I think,
and just to add context to all of that, right around that time, just afterwards, I probably had the worst summer that I've ever had from a business standpoint.
And me too.
You were similar. So I had, like, just maybe clients I'd worked with for a long period of time just came to a natural end of their coaching. Some clients moved countries. It was a number of, and of course I looked at, well, what am I doing? Is there something that's happening with the coaching? Is it that I'm not offering enough support, communication? I really took the accountability to try and see, well, what is it that I'm doing that could be improved? When I actually really dug into it with clients, all it really came down to is it was just a set of circumstances of different individuals all coming together at once at the worst possible time.
Yeah.
So that took its toll mentally. I mean, I'm, it's like I'm someone who's always Mr. Optimistic and, we'll figure out a way and always have a solution. But that was a struggle time. I would say probably from, July through to about maybe say like October time, it was a really tough time mentally. Luckily, partly luck and partly from perseverance and hard work, I can happily say that the last 2 months of the 2025 were good, and then they've continued accelerating beyond that point. So I think that goes to speak to maybe what you were going to get into, is that, well, how the hell do you go about handling when you go through such hard times? I mean, for you, what was it for you that helped you to sort of just see things through to the other side?
I think something that really, really helped me, and I mean, this is something you mentioned as well, but I think I saw like a meme on Facebook, and it was like you can have 100 and, I don't know exactly how it went, but something like you can have 110 problems until your health suffers, or like once your health is, I don't remember, I wish I could remember exactly what it was. It was like basically like as long as you have your health. If you have a health issue, if something happens to your health, then all other problems go away. And for me, like financial problems and struggles and like these things, like it just helped me ground myself in the fact that I'm not sick, I'm healthy, we have each other, I have a loving family. What's the worst thing that can happen? That's always something I've used I've been through many tough situations. That's everybody in their lives, but moments in my life that's been really challenging. And always what I try and think about in that situation is, well, what is the worst thing that can happen? Even if everything went to shit, like what's the worst? I had nothing, I still, and I'm lucky, not everybody have that, but I have my family. I have people who love me. So just to be able to know that I have that and I'll be okay, and that I have the resources you can always start again. It sucks sometimes to start again, but I think that's what kind of was going through. But I'm healthy. We have each other. And then what can you do about it? Like you were very good at that.
I think I remember at the time,
you almost pissed me off though in the moment, because you were like, you were so optimistic and positive. Maybe you were just struggling more than you were telling me. But
part of a coping mechanism.
I think if you had just lied down and like got depressed, then that would have been worse. So I'm very grateful that you are so resilient and strong, because that allowed me to kind of have my moments. But I think, I don't know. For me, like my mental strategies are so important in everything, at least that I do. It's just like, okay, well, I cannot control this. And also I can control what I eat. I can control looking after my body. I can control going to the gym. And this is something that sometimes that we see happening is when,
from a coaching
standpoint, is when life happens, like whether it's like, I have situations with clients where, maybe their parents get sick or something happens, or, I can't go to the gym, or I have to stop coaching, or because this happens and that happens. Well, no, like that is the time to double down on yourself and looking
100%.
after yourself. Like, I'm not going to stop training or stop eating well or stop meal prepping no matter what happens, because that's like a constant. So I'm grateful that I have those strategies and those priorities in my life, because because I know health, like, this is always the number one priority.
They always say your health is your wealth, and
Health
like you
is
say,
your wealth,
people,
yeah.
some of the wealthiest people in the world have got so wealthy to the point that they've exhausted their wealth to try and regain their health because they neglected it en route to get that wealth, right? So I think for us, it was a case of, and you probably remember me back then with being annoyingly positive and optimistic. It was very much about, I was like, well, we got a roof over our heads, we got food on the table, we have each other, and you know, we're going to find a way to get back from
But it
this.
was a moment I was actually worried, like, are we going to be able to cover the current rent, the current expenses? That was my concern for a phase. It's like, unless things turn, because it was a wobbly couple of months, us coming back from because we had just had our holiday and it was my birthday, so it spent more money, and then we'd expected this money to come back around that time. So we were like, okay, everything is going to work out perfectly. And then what do you do in that scenario? Just cancel your holiday, cancel the plans. I was like, don't buy me a present, don't do this, because I was really worried. But yeah.
But you know, we got through the other side, and like you said, I think that's the big thing is, we saw it very much as that you can only control the controllables. We could never, I mean, of course, 3,000 plus other people could never have foreseen that this whole situation was going to happen with the investment. But what we can control is how we react to it. It's the same thing in life. You can't control sometimes what happens to you, but you absolutely can control how you respond to it. And that's one of the few things that you really have left, is that agency to do that. So I think that for me was the big thing that got me through it as well. I can't control that, but what are the things that are within my power to control? And that was it.
Yeah, just got to keep moving forwards, take it a day at a time, and then learn from the mistakes. And
so I think is a good final message for this podcast is just that, you know, social media has a great way of portraying that everything is funky and rosy, and that, you know, you have the highlight reel. Everyone projects what they want you to see. So we just thought this was a great opportunity to share, well, that we don't share a lot about our personal lives, and that's for good reason. We like to keep our personal lives personal. We share our fitness.
I don't mind. Like, I actually feel I would want to be a bit more open and not sitting crying on camera and talking about silly stuff. I'm not saying that people are crying on camera and talking about silly stuff, but like, be a bit more. Yeah, maybe. But just talk more. I find it quite difficult, not because I don't want to, but I just don't know how to start. So this was a good thing.
I suppose we're a bit different in a way, because I personally don't like to share a lot of my personal life. I like to keep it to fitness and what I do and who I am as a coach. Now, sprinkling in a little bit of that stuff and on stories and stuff, fine. But when it comes to like personal life, I like to keep my private life private. So I think this was for us a very rare opportunity to like, hey, you know what? This was something that was incredibly, you know, had a massive impact on us. And so let's just share it. And maybe for those of you listening, you have went through something similar or something like it. But just know that even though it's
you're
something
not alone.
that, you're not alone. And just also that it's something that even if people are not openly talking about it, you don't know what's happening behind closed doors. So just keep that in mind.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Fitness Rants podcast.
If you got value from this conversation, be sure to hit subscribe on either YouTube or your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss any of our weekly rants.
Oh, and if you're feeling generous, we would really appreciate it if you would drop us a 5-star rating or a review, because it would help more listeners like you to find the show.
If you haven't already, be sure to connect with us on Instagram. We'll leave our handles in the episode description.
Thanks for tuning in. We look forward to having you back for our next episode.